This topic is called Tools for Participatory Planning. The contents of the presentation is as follows. Learning objectives. The concept of participation. Participatory planning and design. Methods and tools for participatory planning and design. Digital tools. Key takeaways. The learning objectives of this topic are to understand the concept of participation in planning and design. Define participatory planning and related key issues. Identify methods and tools and their usage for participatory planning and design. As a general concept, participation includes diverse decision-making processes involving numerous stakeholders. The concept of participation can be traced back to the public forums organized in ancient Greek civilizations. Until the late 1960s, the participation of non-expert citizens in the design of urban space and the planning decisions was difficult and limited. Until then, only wealthy groups were generally able to influence planning and design decisions in their cities and/or neighborhoods. Since the 1960s, a period of socio-political change, the concept of participation has become significant in human-centered disciplines such as architecture and planning. Processes and practices in which the urban user, the main actor of urban space, actively participates in the planning and design of urban spaces began to emerge in late 1960s. These practices are fundamentally based on the principle that the quality of life in urban areas improves significantly when residents transition from passive inhabitants to active participants in the development and management of their environment. In developed countries, discussions of participation arose during the urban renewal programs of the 1950s and 1960s, when existing neighborhoods were completely destroyed and local communities were displaced or moved to high-rise residential blocks on the peripheries of cities, devoid of amenities and local employment. These settlements soon became unpopular living spaces, and the disparity between the spaces created by top-down planning and the urban environment people desired to live led to urban riots and protests. First, idealistic architects and planners began to help local communities in resisting top-down plans that threatened to tear their neighborhoods and communities apart through direct action or cheap but free professional advice. Meanwhile, decision-makers recognized the significant impact of poor management of the built environment on national social and economic problems, and a growing awareness of better ways to plan and design urban spaces began to develop. It was envisioned that the alienation between planners, designers, and users could be overcome by including local residents in decision-making processes. As a result of these developments, the volunteer process initiated by radical and activist professionals gradually became institutionalized, and residents began to be formally included in the planning and design of urban spaces. The active role of citizens in the design of urban space through individual and collective action ensures that this field of action is no longer reserved for specialists, but rather a space where citizens can exercise their rights and responsibilities. Participatory planning is defined as the process of planning and implementing major physical change through combining the knowledge, skills, and resources of professional planners and urban designers with the knowledge, skills, and resources of local communities. In this process, professionals do not produce complete and unchangeable solutions. Solutions are developed at the end of a continuous dialogue between the professionals and the users. Professionals state opinions, provide technical aid, and discuss the consequences of various alternatives. Local people state their opinions and contribute their expertise. Some key issues in participatory planning are worth exploring to better understand the process. These are power and power distribution, capacity building and empowerment, level of participation, stakeholders. To understand participation, the issue of power should be understood. Power can be defined as the ability of different interests to achieve what they want. Power can depend on who has information and money, also on people's confidence and skills. People or groups who have decision-making power are usually unwilling to share it, and thus historically some groups have been excluded from decision-making processes. In this regard, Community participation has been defined as a strategy of redistributing power that would consciously include weak groups excluded from political and economic processes in society. It is argued that unless power is redistributed, participation will be nothing more than an empty promise. So, decision-making power should be shared for participation to have any meaningful impact. In general, capacity building is defined as the intentional process of enhancing the skills, knowledge, systems, and infrastructure of individuals and organizations. In participatory planning processes, capacity building works as a bridge between having a seat at the table and having a voice in the outcome. Without it, participation often remains a hollow exercise where only those with existing power or technical knowledge steer the conversation. It provides marginalized stakeholders with the technical literacy and communication skills needed to engage as equals with professionals and government officials. When participants understand the constraints and possibilities of a project, such as budget cycles or land use laws, their contributions become more realistic and actionable. By developing the capacity of a community to plan for itself, the project's success no longer depends on outside consultants. The community gains the agency to manage and maintain the initiative long after the initial planning phase ends. Capacity building is not only essential for the stakeholders in local communities, but it is a necessary process to enable professionals to adjust their traditional perspectives so that community stakeholders are allowed more than a consultative role in the planning and design processes, usually determined and driven by officials. The latter metaphor has been widely used in showing how equitably decision power is distributed and how well citizens are involved in decision-making processes. The original ladder of participation, developed in 1968, identified 8 levels of participation, the first rung being the lowest and the last rung being highest. The first 2 rungs of the ladder make up the non-participation zone, manipulation and therapy. This zone represents situations where citizens are not involved in the decisions. The next 3 steps form the symbolic compromise zone, informing, consultation, and placation. In this zone, some degree of participation happens, but it is usually symbolic with no real impact. The highest 3 steps, which are defined as citizen power degrees, are partnership, delegated authority, and citizen control. According to this model, real participation begins at the partnership level, where decision-making power is distributed evenly among all stakeholders. This brings us to the issue of the stakeholders. A stakeholder is anyone who has a stake in what happens. Stakeholders vary in every case and based on the desired outcome of the participatory planning process. A community can consist of different stakeholders or stakeholder groups. So, at the very beginning of the participatory process, all potential stakeholders should be identified based on their main incentives and how they can contribute to the process. They should be evaluated according to their power, influence, relevance, and roles in the different stages of the process. Information about the stakeholders involved should be gathered, such as their relations to the process, their knowledge, appropriate means of communication, willingness to engage, etc. According to the purpose of the participatory process, the right methods of participation for each stakeholder group need to be selected. The ladder of participation model can be used to structure the participatory process. In that context, contemporary interpretations propose 5 levels of participation: information, consultation, deciding together or involvement, acting together or collaboration, supporting independent community initiatives or empowerment. City governments, planners, and designers are using a variety of methods and tools in participatory planning and design processes at various levels. Information represents the basic level of participation. This level can be suitable on its own in some circumstances, but usually it is used as the beginning stage of any level of participation process. Methods which can be used at the informational level include public meetings, briefings, telephone interviews, leaflets, exhibitions, promotions, press and media repositories, information forms, websites, and technical reports. Consultation is aimed when people are offered some choices on what is going to be done. However, they do not have the opportunity to develop their own ideas or participate in putting plans into action. Methods such as surveys, focus groups, positive inquiry, interviews, workshops, computer-aided processes, public meetings, user panels, opinion polls, consensus conferences, deliberative mapping, and deliberative polling can be used to achieve consultation. Deciding together or involvement is the level when people are given power to choose, but they do not fully share the responsibility to take the agreed decisions further. Acting together or collaboration is realized when different stakeholders with various interests decide together on the best option and they form a partnership to carry it forward. It may involve short-term collaboration or forming more permanent partnerships with other interests. Supporting local initiatives or empowerment encompasses helping independent community-based initiatives develop and carry out their own plans. Methods used to achieve these higher levels of participation include consensus workshops, public advisory boards, citizens' juries, citizens' panels, participatory strategic planning, planning for real, design charrettes, future exploration conferences, participatory budgeting, and computer-aided processes. Combining different methods increases their effectiveness. Now, let us look at some of the widely used participatory planning methods and tools in detail. Citizens' juries, deliberative mapping, planning for real, charrettes, or inquiry by design. A citizens' jury is a small panel made up of a randomly selected and demographically diverse group of people, jurors, who listen to and analyze information on complex issues. It is structured to resemble a criminal jury, who carefully examine a significant public issue and deliver a verdict. Witnesses, who act as representatives on the issues being examined, present their cases to the jury and answer their questions. The jury deliberates on the information presented and decide on what they will recommend to decision-makers. A citizens' jury is instrumental where a transparent and democratic tool is essential to support a decision-making process. Deliberative mapping involves both specialists and members of the public. It combines different approaches to assess how participants rate different policy options against a set of defined criteria. Separate panels are created consisting of the citizens and the experts. Panels are generally set based on gender and socioeconomic background to ensure that people are comfortable voicing their views. The citizens' panels and the experts discuss the issue both separately from one another and at a joint workshop. This ensures that both groups to learn from each other without the experts dominating. The aim of the process is not integrating expert and public opinions, but understanding their different perspectives on a policy process. The groups themselves determine their assessment criteria for the options, thereby limiting any structural bias, and arrive at a ranking of them. Deliberative mapping comprises both quantitative and qualitative methods, and participants work both individually and as a group. Planning for Real R. PFR is a widely respected, model-based approach to participatory planning that empowers residents to take charge of their neighborhood's future. By using a three-dimensional model of their area, citizens can visually highlight specific problems and propose solutions. This collaborative process involves working alongside local authorities to turn community feedback into a concrete, actionable strategy for improvement. During these sessions, which can be tailored for specific demographics like youth, participants use color-coded flags and cards to mark the 3D model. These materials are organized into 8 distinct themes, such as health or safety, allowing everyone to see the community's primary concerns at a glance. Participants are also encouraged to contribute original ideas using blank cards. Once the session concludes, every piece of feedback is systematically documented, noting the specific issue, its location, and the frequency of that particular concern. This data is then compiled into a Key Findings report, which serves as the foundation for the next phase of the planning process. A charrette, or an inquiry by design, is an intensive, multi-day collaborative workshop where stakeholders, including designers, residents, and local officials, work together to solve complex planning problems. Unlike traditional consultation methods that can stretch over months, a charrette compresses the design process into a short, focused time frame. This compressed process encourages participants to move past entrenched positions and work toward creative, consensus-based solutions. The goal is to produce a feasible vision or master plan that balances technical requirements with the actual needs of the community. During the process, the design team works in public, often setting up a temporary studio on or near the site being discussed. This allows for an iterative loop where ideas are proposed, sketched, and immediately critiqued by the people who will be affected by them. By visualizing plans in real time, through drawings, maps, and models, the inquiry by design method makes abstract planning concepts tangible. This transparency helps build trust between the public and developers, as residents can see exactly how their feedback is being integrated into the evolving design. Ultimately, the strength of this method lies in its ability to address technical conflicts, such as traffic flow, environmental constraints, and density, simultaneously rather than in isolation. By the end of the session, the output is not just a report, but a shared blueprint that has already undergone a rigorous round of testing and public vetting. This collaborative ownership often leads to a smoother implementation phase, as the resulting plan reflects a negotiated agreement rather than a top-down mandate. The integration of digital tools into participatory planning has fundamentally reshaped the relationship between urban planners and the public. Traditionally, participatory planning relied on face-to-face methods discussed, which often suffered from limited reach and participation fatigue. However, the digital turn has introduced more inclusive, scalable, and interactive methods for gathering local knowledge. One of the most significant advancements is the use of Public Participation Geographic Information Systems, PPGIS. These tools allow citizens to attach subjective meanings, such as perceived safety or social value, to specific geographic locations. Unlike traditional data, this soft GIS data provides planners with invaluable insights into the lived experiences of residents. Beyond mapping, the use of 3D visualization and virtual reality, VR, has bridged the communication gap between technical experts and laypeople. It is highlighted in literature that visual tools are essential for making complex spatial proposals understandable to a non-expert audience. Furthermore, serious games and gamified platforms enable younger demographics, who are traditionally underrepresented in planning processes, to engage with urban design in a low-stakes, interactive environment. A central pillar in recent literature is the rise of urban digital twins, UDT. UDTs serve as sophisticated co-creation frameworks that allow residents to visualize and interact with complex urban scenarios, such as the development of positive energy districts. Furthermore, the integration of augmented reality, AR, and interactive mediums significantly enhances participant motivation and the quality of spatial feedback compared to traditional 2D mapping tools. The integration of artificial intelligence, AI, has addressed one of the most persistent challenges in participatory planning: the analysis of massive volumes of qualitative local knowledge. AI-driven tools can synthesize thousands of citizen comments and spatial preferences into actionable planning insights in real time. However, despite the potential for democratization, academics warn against the digital divide. Relying solely on digital tools can exclude elderly populations or those without high-speed internet access, potentially reinforcing existing social inequalities. Therefore, the current academic consensus suggests a hybrid approach, blending digital platforms with physical interventions to ensure a more representative sample of the community. Digital tools must be intentionally designed to promote equity, ensuring that technological advancements do not inadvertently marginalize vulnerable groups. Key takeaways from this are: participation includes diverse decision-making processes involving numerous stakeholders. In participatory planning process, professionals do not produce complete and unchangeable solutions. Solutions are developed at the end of a continuous dialogue between the professionals and the users. For participation to have any meaningful impact, decision-making power should be shared. Community participation works as a strategy of redistributing power so that excluded groups would be consciously included. Without capacity building, participation often remains a hollow exercise where only those with existing power or technical knowledge steer the conversation. Capacity building also enables professionals to adjust their traditional views so that community stakeholders are allowed more than a consultative role in planning. Not all participatory processes achieve the same level of participation. In practice, there is usually a spectrum of participation levels from non-participation through symbolic to genuine participation. A community can consist of different stakeholders or stakeholder groups. It is important to identify all potential stakeholders at the very beginning of the participatory process. According to the purpose of the participatory process, the right methods of participation for each stakeholder group need to be selected. The ladder of participation model can be used to structure the participatory process and guide the selection of participatory planning methods and tools. Public meetings, briefings, interviews, leaflets, exhibitions, and websites can be used to give information and achieve the basic level of participation. Surveys, focus groups, workshops, computer-aided processes, consensus conferences, deliberative mapping can be used to achieve consultation, level participation. To reach higher levels of participation, such as involvement, collaboration, and empowerment, which requires the active engagement of stakeholders, planning for real, charrettes, or inquiry by design, citizens' juries, participatory budgeting methods can be used. Recently, the use of digital tools increased significantly in participatory planning. However, employing only digital tools can exclude elderly populations or those without high-speed internet access, potentially reinforcing existing social inequalities. Therefore, a hybrid approach, blending digital platforms with physical interventions to ensure a more representative sample of the community, is essential.